When there is huge magnitude, there's always that amount of rework that is happening on projects, unstructured communication protocols and confusions, um, lack of quality documentations, and unstructured documentation that is
When
currently
there is
in the
huge
project
magnitude,
delivery
there's always
methodologies.
that amount
Of
of
course,
rework
change
that is
orders,
happening on
schedule
projects.
conflicts, out of sequence work,
Unstructured communication
interdependency
protocols
between
and
different
confusions,
stakeholders are not being properly managed.
lack of
And of course,
quality
significant requirements
documentations,
for people
and
management, because we have people
unstructured
from various
documentation that
different
is currently in
backgrounds,
the
people
huge
from design
magnitude. There's
development,
always
people
that
from construction
amount of
management,
rework
change
that is
orders,
happening on
people from
projects.
contracting and
Out of
execution
sequence
background, and
work,
then operations and
interdependency
maintenance,
between different
where
stakeholders are not
skill
being
sets of
properly
people are
managed. Lack
different,
of
and of
quality
course the
documentation
digital
requirements for
fabric
people
of
management.
requirement on projects, since it is varying, it becomes very critical for the management segment of the users, or managers on the project, to put significant efforts in people management activities, right? Which again is required due to coordination and cooperation among stakeholders. So, which brings us to this requirement of having a standardized framework for globally accepted way of delivery of information during the design and construction phase. That is this part 2 of the ISO 19650 series. By adopting this standard, stakeholders gain a common framework that enhances information sharing, minimizes errors, reduces rework, and ultimately improves project outcomes. So, this standard is primarily built on these key principles. We saw some of the critical concerns that we had in the previous slide, and this principle, this standard is based on addressing those critical principles. That is, it emphasizes collaboration among project participants through a unified information management approach. It promotes open communication, shared responsibilities, and interconnectivity among diverse stakeholders. The standard introduces a structured approach to information management, ensuring consistent naming conventions of the containers, information containers that are generated, data organization, and of course, version controls of project files. This streamlines data exchange, making it accessible and understandable throughout the project's lifecycle. ISO 19650 Part 2 also promotes the adoption of standardized processes and procedures, which leads to increased efficiency and effectiveness. Um, this standardization transcends the organizational boundaries, enabling a seamless collaboration even in complex projects. With a focus on information quality and accuracy, ISO 19650 aids in mitigating risks associated with inadequate or erroneous data. This approach of this proactive approach prevents costly mistakes and delays that usually occur during the execution or construction phase. The standard champions transparency by facilitating easy access to project information for all authorized stakeholders. This transparency cultivates trust among the project participants and leads to improved decision making. Now, I will quickly run through some of the standards that are available to us under this 19650 framework for BIM information management, where we have total six standards planned, out of which two are still under development and four already available. Where part one is primarily talking about the concepts and principles that are outlined in this entire series of the standard, giving readers and practitioners to get a summary of the terminologies and some of the workflows being talked about. Part 2 talks about the delivery phase of the asset, that is the capital expenditure phase of design and construction, which we will be focusing on in our today's session. Moving to part 3, we have the standard talking about the operational phase of the asset and how information management framework for efficient operations of the asset can be managed. Part 4 is still under development, which will be talking about the information exchange scheme. And part 5 outlines the security protocols and strategies for defining and managing information security on a project. Uh, Part 6 will be talking about the health and safety aspects of project. Right. Also, we would like to encourage the audience to go through some of the previous webinars that Desapex has already delivered, where some of these concepts have been discussed more in detail. For the purpose of moving into the topic of today's discussion, will be moving forward. So, Desapex became the first company in the world and is still the only company in India to have this BSI kite mark verification for ISO 19650 Part 1 and 2. This certification was received in 2019. As a certified company for BIM implementation, we help our global clients and their businesses to implement BIM for holistic digital transformation of businesses in line with the framework. We are committed to enable digital adoption and integration of technology for target value design, through which we believe that a sustainable built environment is possible. Now, jumping into the topic, that is the delivery phase of assets through ISO 19650 Part 2, there are 8 steps or 8 stages, if you would call it, in the overall delivery phase of the asset as outlined and broken down in the standard. The first 3 steps are assessment and need, invitation to tender, and tender response, that primarily outline the planning and defining scope of the project. This is programming phase, if you would call in your regular project management terminologies. But this becomes the programming phase. And the next set of stages would be appointment, mobilization, and collaborative information production stages, which are primarily scheduling and tracking of information development process. And you have information delivery model and project closeout stages, which address the verification and validation of the information models developed in the due course of the project, and then formally close out the project. From a owner's perspective, when we first begin planning a project, we often skip some of the basic ground rules, that is setting up minimum information requirements and the expectations that the owner has from its consultants or contractors or specialist vendors that are brought on board. We often start off in a hurry but spend time in later phases to correct the issues caused due to incomplete or insufficient planning process. So what we will be seeing now are the set of information requirements that are required to be documented to leave no stone unturned. Right. So The assessment and need phase starts off with ensuring and setting up a dedicated individual to manage and oversee all the processes required to fulfill the project's information requirements, identify the project milestones, identify different standards that are required to be used on the project, identify the production methods and procedures that are required to be followed on the project. If this is part of a series of projects that are previously delivered, or there are any organizational standards or, or organizational process assets and shared resources that you might have from the previous projects are documented and shared with relevant teams. And then we set up the project's common data environment. We will look at common data environment and its benefits and how it works later down the session. And we define and identify projects information protocols. The outputs of this stage would be uh, hello, I still audible? Outcome of this phase that we were looking at in assessment and need, the first step of jumping into implementing ISO 19650 is setting up the organizational information requirements for the project, uh, and then the project information requirements, and then the asset information requirements. We'll look at these OIR, PIR, and AIR on this in this next slide. So the organizational information requirements are the set of if you can call it the requirement, or let's say identifying some of the uh, requirements or aligning the strategic growth of the organization, and see if this particular project that is being planned is in line with the overall organizational requirement, and it definitely adds value to its overall business line. This involves appointing parties or the owners, the documenting the organizational objectives, strategic business operation requirement, asset management requirement, and any policies that will be utilized. So basically, the question that is being answered in this OIR is, will this project add value, and is it in line with the objectives or the overall program of the organization's growth? Moving further to project information requirements, we here define the project scope. Its PIR is basically a set of high-level information requirements, partially created from OIR, the previous document that was created. PIR focuses on information that the appointing party, the owner, requires at key decision points during a design and the construction project delivery. While creating this set of requirements, the owner should take into consideration the project plan of work and tie its key decision points with the overall project schedule. A key decision point takes place when the client makes a decision based on the information provided by the delivery team. Key decision points define the information delivery milestones. That is, when the project information is required, and defining such events eliminates a good part of last minute information requirements. So, to summarize, the project information requirements document the intended purpose for which the information will be used by the appointing party, the project plan of work, intended procurement route, number of key decision points that are going to be in the project, decisions that the appointing party needs to take, because here we are defining what the uh, the consultant or somebody who's being onboarded or the internal teams as an owner needs to perform or their activities, and the questions to which the appointing party needs answers to make informed decisions. So what the other parties would need to provide the owner as an input for taking a certain decision on the project. So moving further into asset information requirements, this is basically identifying what are the requirements that need to be carried out for the asset operation phase, where it captures the information that is required for streamlined facility management, not just how it should be delivered, but also getting down into the weeds of what form and what are the accepted formats of deliverables that will be accepted as part of the handover. So once this requirement of assessment and this needs assessment and the organizational requirements are documented, we then proceed to inviting these potential bidders to the project requirement as an invitation to tender. Now here, the another critical important aspect of ISO 19650, that is developing of exchange information requirements, that is EIR. It's a document that is required to invite people for a tender. It basically documents the requirements at a more higher level and also detailed information requirements. It also there is also a requirement to establish the acceptance criteria on the project, and what are the evaluation criteria for the bidders assessment. So, like I said, the deliverable or the output of this stage would be an exchange information requirement EIR, and any reference information and just shared resources that is required for the prospective bidders to understand about this particular requirement, and of course evaluation criteria. So the exchange information requirements is primarily the document that that identifies the BIM use cases on the project, the minimum level of information need. You might be coming across or people talking about, we need LOD 3000, LOD 4000. Well, I'm just exaggerating, but based on the level of information needed on the project, there is a requirement of defining what those terminologies mean to you, because there might be certain organizations that might be misunderstanding or misinterpreting these numbers or terminologies. um, uh, Defining the acceptance criteria, shared resources and milestones of the project are defined. Of course, use cases of the project could be, you could be using BIM for only planning, or you could be using for design development and construction documentation, or using the same BIM model for further 4D and 5D simulation, or digital fabrication, or even 3D control and planning, or further move ahead to taking the further dimensions of BIM for operations and facility management. So whether it is existing condition modeling or design review or 3D coordination and clash detection, construction documentation, phase planning or asset management, you identify those requirements on the project and let your prospective bidders know that these are the areas of interest, and the methodologies and protocols that they would be using to achieve this would be documented. Also, another critical aspect that most people confuse or misunderstand here is that this is only limited to the owner and, let's say, a primary design consultant. But no, this framework is applicable to each and every engagement or appointment on the project, uh, as termed in the standard. So whether it is to appoint the main design consultant by the owner, or the design consultant further subcontracting this to specific subject matter expert for different systems design. If we take an example of, let's say, company A being, uh, a single point of contact for the entire design development deliverables, but company A has in-house architecture and interior design capabilities, but they appoint, let's say, company B, which takes care of the structural design development, and let's say company C and D for special process piping, or let's say MVP consulting, and the overall responsibility still remains with company A. It's a lead appointed party as in context to these subcontracts. So irrespective of whether it is the design consultant being appointed by directly the owner, or the individual subcontractors that further this design consultant takes care, all of these individual appointments or subcontracts would need to be developed in the same order as we saw now, that is setting up the EIR, exchange information requirements, and how the collaboration between you and that further subcontract which needs to happen. So this is the same applicable to any appointments that are done during the construction or the design development phase. So it continues to implement as such. So now that the invitation to tender has gone out, it is now further shared with prospective or interested bidders who would like to perform this project. As a response to tender, uh, we develop what is called as a BIM execution plan, where we assess, we set up the uh, deliverables of what we would be providing as a bidder based on the exchange information requirements. What are the critical requirements on the project and how we deliver that project, those requirements on this project, and set up the proposed
mobilization plan, develop the risk registers for the project, and compile the overall tender response and submit over to the client team. So here is where a BIM execution is developed, and along with that, a capability and a capacity matrix to showcase the resources that would be assigned on this particular assignment and share their relevant capability and capacities, and a plan how this entire set of resources would be mobilized on the project. So the BIM execution plan talks about selection and configuration of tools and technologies and any softwares that will be used on the project. The data management systems, the file naming conventions, level of information need, both in terms of the geometry (LOD) and LOI, that is the level of non-geometrical information. How the model would be managed and federated. If let's say there are multiple disciplines, how would it be federated and broken down in context to the overall project? What are the different exchange formats that would be used on this design development or delivery? Communication protocol, what are the platforms that are allowed, and how is the frequency of exchange of information? Key personnel and their capabilities, as we saw before, the overall size of the team, methods and procedures, of course, the IT infrastructure that will be utilized on the project, and the overall mobilization plan and risk register for the project. So you can see that this requirement is defined in such detailed manner that in most cases, if we don't discuss these critical areas, there's always that chance of you missing out certain critical requirement, and later realizing in the project that "Arey, we wanted this but we did not get." So defining in such detail allows that you get what you actually are expecting and ensures that everybody on the project are on the same page. So I'd like to remind that this BEP that we are seeing is something that is developed in context to the overall exchange information requirement. So the client would, let's say, ask what would be, or let's say, how would you achieve, let's say, BIM 4D or 5D? You would then say that, we'll use software X, software Y, and this overall process of how we are going to bring the model and the project schedule combined together to provide that overall virtual design and construction simulation. So here, based on the use case, what processes, methodologies, or softwares that you would be using to achieve that requirement is what you outline for each requirement, and also any other specific requirements, like we need people who are having relevant experience of delivering this type of project before, or any such requirement is what you are answering through this BIM execution plan. So once that tender response is submitted back to the owner or the appointing party, it then further goes to the assessment, where the appointing party assesses, or let's say evaluates the submission through based on the previously agreed upon evaluation criteria, and the delivery team's BIM execution plan is reviewed. Responsibility matrix is developed, and then if you have any further subcontracts to be developed, you will have those information requirements defined, and you will further send it to those subcontractors that you would be onboarding on the project, and then establish the task information delivery plan, master information delivery plan, and complete the overall appointment protocols. So in this segment, when we saw the same BIM execution plan, so if there are any proposed modifications or deviations to the exchange information requirements, those will be evaluated. If there's nothing that is conflicting or is a concern to the appointing party, then the same BIM execution plan is approved and is taken further for the next phase. and a detailed responsibility matrix is developed to explicitly define what are the activities and who would be responsible for delivering on the project. uh, you then look at the task information delivery plan, which is basically specifying the delivery dates for a specific task team. I know most of the times the drawing register or drawing list from our consultants or contractors are pretty generic and vague, and not really conveying the desired information. Documenting the deliverables in this framework will ensure that the owner exactly knows what and when he is to expect information, and of course in what format. So you can see the deliverable name of the document, description of what it contains, the exchange formats, as in which format is it in? Is it in .pdf, .dwg, .ifc? You know, there are projects where you send a floor plan and you expect a floor plan, and let's say somebody sends you in .png, or let's say captures the screen of the video and sends it to you and says, "Sir, I've sent you the floor plan." It is still a valid submission, but the exchange format is not something that you were expecting. It might seem silly, but that's how it goes, right? That's why you're required to be as specific as possible when it comes to defining contractual requirements. So this is a snapshot of TIDP from one of our projects, and you can see how detailed it is in terms of the requirement and stage-wise deliverables. The information related to who submits, when are they going to submit, what and in what format are these going to be submitted is clearly defined, and each and every individual file container is broken down so that the team exactly is aware of what is going to be part of this. Right. So when this is submitted, should the owner be expecting a certain deliverable, and if it's not here, we can, I mean, the owner or the appointing party can request the delivery team to add that or modify a particular line item so that they can understand the overall, and reevaluate and update the information delivery plan. And assume that this is for an individual task team that is considering, let's say you have architecture, structure, and MEP disciplines. Assume that this is the architecture departments or architecture team's task information delivery plan. Likewise, if you bring in for mechanical, electrical, structure, you will then have a compiled master information delivery plan that serves like a master schedule for the project and has every deliverable from each consultant documented here. Right. So the last part of this stage is to complete the lead appointed parties and appointed parties appointment documents like TIDP, MIDP, information protocol standards, and submit these. Once this appointment is complete, we then proceed to mobilizing the resources on the project, where the resources, whether it is human resource or IT resource that were proposed for the project, are deployed or mobilized on the project, and certain uh, QA processes, or let's say information production methods and procedures that were outlined before, are tested and verified that all systems are in place, and then we actually proceed to developing the generation of information. So if you, let's say, to simplify, this is where we actually start generating whether it is a 3D model, whether it's a 2D drawing, calculations or reports, or anything that is associated with the information related to the project, is what is created here in this collaborative information production framework. This is where the information is developed and exchanged with uh, other stakeholders on the project for efficient collaboration. Of course, internal QA processes to review information, further approve it for sharing with other parties. The information model review and subsequent progress that is happening in the project are periodically shared, and the development and review processes of the project are managed. So here you have developed a project information model and quality checks logs of different internal and external file exchanges that have happened for efficient collaborative information production. So we have seen now that there are so many information containers or files that are related to this project information that are being developed. But where do we store these? How do we store? How do we exchange information among different stakeholders? So that's where a common data environment as a concept is developed. It's a solution, or let's say a platform which has an organized workflow to store and manage all information regarding a project right from its initiation stage and continues to the entire life cycle of an asset. The organized workflow refers to the timely communication of quality information between the relevant stakeholders of the project. This workflow has to be defined properly in the CD document, or let's say how the CD is going to be managed and worked out with relevant access control. So let's say the architecture team would not have access to the structural team's work in progress information, or let's say not ready to share information. It also helps for structured information development reviews, approvals, and authorizations of information created throughout the delivery phase of the asset. So, comparing with the traditional method, or let's say using a common data environment, usually the traditional methods would be developing information in siloed manner where individual consulting or contracting companies build their own drawings or models in their own office, and then they share it over email or some platform for further exchange. Where there is a possibility of of course there's high manual intervention, and also there are possibilities of not delivering information to right people at the right time. That's where using a Apofa CD allows a single cloud platform or project server where everybody has access to these different containers where the information developed are shared, and proper access control is maintained to make sure that the security and the confidentiality of information is maintained, and all information related to the project is available to you in one single location. And there is another very important concept called suitability codes, where we have now established a place to keep files, but there's still an issue where we normally come across where each organization has their own file naming methodology, and that the other organization might not find it comfortable or aligned with theirs methodology. In the approved BEP, there's a nomenclature agreed upon by all stakeholders, ensuring a standardized naming convention based on the originating organization, what information it contains, and its status in context to the overall project status. Additional information that is required is captured as part of the metadata. Despite this standardization, this is the common issue that we face. That is, we send the file, but we do not know what, or let's say we do not specify what is its purpose of sharing. If the file is used for any other purpose other than the intended usage, it will definitely lead to misinterpretations. One such experience from my own personal previous projects before is that one of the consultants had shared the model with us for review and comment only, but the milestone required them to submit a full-fledged model for, let's say, quantity takeoff. As per the milestone, our team started to use the model for extracting quantities, but later it was brought to notice that the file was not ready for quantity takeoff.
So the standard requires every file container to have the metadata information related to its purpose of sharing, so that anybody accessing the file exactly knows the intended purpose of sharing the files. Now, had this been the case during that submission, we would not have spent time in quantifying the wrong model. What you see on the screen are the suitability codes and what they are used for. For example, if there is any file that is denominated as S naught, then it's something that is still a work in progress model and is not supposed to be used for any, or let's say, decision making activities or for collaboration. But if there are files that are denominated with S1 to S7, then they're either suitable for coordination, they're just FYI, or they're available for review and comment or further stage approvals. Based on these suitability codes, one can understand why this project file has been shared and how it is going to be consumed by other parties. So, this clearly structured information management framework of how a information container is being developed, shared for approval or consumption of other parties, and then of course use that for further review and authorization and proceeding further for final approved, or let's say published content for further activities that are going to be used on the project, whether it is for quantity takeoffs or construction or let's say budgetary approvals. All of it can be finalized, and those approved content would be stored in, let's say, a published state of the CD, right? So the benefits of this CD is, it ensures that you have a single source of truth. You have one single location where you have all project information, and every storage of the file is accessible for other stakeholders based on the security and access control protocols defined, so that everybody has the right information at the right time, and it increases transparency of locating the files and understanding where it is available, and it improves efficiency and quality, because now you have reduced the amount of miscommunications that could happen, and you get the information accurately so that you don't have to spend time in finding certain information. And of course, with higher security protocols as per the ISO 19650 standards, you get to have that peace of mind of information security, and of course identification of right information at the right time. So here in the information delivery model phase, we submit over the information models that are developed to the owner or lead appointed party, where the evaluation or assessment of the submitted information is reviewed and approved, or let's say authorized for further stages, and then the appointing parties accept and finalize the project, where the feedback forms are shared to understand the let's say, to understand how the overall process went, and any feedback in terms of implementing in the overall production methodologies, and any lessons learned are documented so that future projects can be managed better. Right. So here there is a critical aspect of periodic model auditing and model management, because we are developing information, and the information is being shared progressively, where the spatial coordination, or clash coordination that we call, needs to happen periodically to ensure we don't end up with surprises on the last day of project completion, and also identifying the right level of detail and level of information definitions are being met as per the acceptance criteria, because the model is or the information containers are actually being utilized for achieving various other parallel activities, whether it is for asset management verification or 4D and 5D simulation for project sequencing and budgetary estimations.
and of course for energy management and sustainability analysis as defined in the initial use cases of the project. Right. So this periodic model auditing is also a necessary step that is identified within the BIM execution plan as to whether the model auditing is going to happen weekly, monthly, or quarterly based on the project schedule, and ensure that the information management is happening in a streamlined manner. So once this periodically model development and authorization is completed, and you have the overall project reaching closeout, or let's say completion, you archive the project information model into an asset information model, which is further used for handing over to the operations team, and the requirements as per the initial set out of how this particular information model would be used for asset management is verified and validated, and then you compile the lessons learned for this particular project so that you can use it for future projects. So now we have seen the entire framework of ISO 19650, and how right from the initial assessment of the needs on the project, by developing so many documentation and looking at information requirements more critically, we've set up the common data environment, what are the milestones, softwares, data exchange formats, responsibility matrix, and acceptance criteria and intended use cases of the project using BIM. And of course, moving further into developing an EIR, that is an exchange information requirement, then further to tender response by developing a BIM execution plan, getting that approved, and developing a final BIM execution plan. Of course, BIM execution plan is a live document which gets updated every now and then, where when there is a significant change or impact on the project, uh, where we further proceed to mobilization, and then develop information as per the approved nomenclature or definition of file naming convention, and then follow the CD process for a collaborative production and exchange of information. Of course, down the line, you could use many different digital engineering technologies like augmented reality, virtual reality, to enhance and increase the collaboration. There is no definition, or let's say limitation, on what you can use or what you should use, but rather a framework of how you can enhance your information management process through this standard is what ISO 19650 defines. You're free to use different methodologies or different technologies to streamline a certain aspect of your project delivery. Of course, using 4D and 5D simulation for your virtual design and construction analysis, then using reality capture and laser scanning activities for validating as-builts and handover, or even construction progress monitoring for efficiently managing construction activities, and then as-built validation and handover for the operations phase of the project, and then further handing over this to asset management, where the same project information model, which is now an asset information model, is containing the relevant information related to facility management, and allows the user or the owner to use that for day-to-day operations management on platforms like Granlund Manager. It's our own computerized maintenance management solution that we offer to our customers. And then, of course, compile the lessons learned to complete the critical positives and negative experience on the project, so that they either occur on the project again because it's positive impact, and let's say reduce or not occur in your next projects because it had a negative impact. So documenting those lessons learned is a critical requirement on this standard. So we've seen these aspects which are critically identified and listed, where um, even smallest of the smallest thing that would be normally considered, or let's say, why would we need to tell which software, or let's say which file format we are submitting this in, or some of these information might sometimes find silly, or why should we write it in that detail? But defining those in such detail allows you to bring in an impact in increasing the overall efficiency, that allows you to manage your projects better, and enhancing the collaboration, and allowing more collaboration between architects, engineers, contractors, and other stakeholders to work seamlessly together. And with consistent information being developed, and aligning with the quality of design and construction requirements, you have that assured quality deliverables that could even reach or exceed the performance expectations on the project. And of course, since this is being a holistic approach to design, construction, and operations aspects being discussed right from the beginning, you have a more streamlined management of all of your processes that allows you to gain more operational success, and a happy end user on the project, right? So concluding this session with what we've seen now is ISO 19650 serving as a guiding compass for design and construction management. And by embracing this principle and practices that we've seen, organizations can take themselves, or let's say breach those limitations that are set out by traditional practices, and emerge in a new era of collaboration, efficiency, and build more transparency. As the built environment continues to evolve, the standard paves the way for a future where information is seamlessly woven into the fabric of every successful project. Deservix is committed to create awareness and support the industry in adopting the standard to streamline, industry-wide transformation process. Many technical webinars and written content are posted on our website and different social media platforms to shed some light on the most critical concepts, breaking down into bite-sized information to easily understand and implement on your projects. A few of the already completed webinars that provide more insights and detailed information on some of the topics that are covered are highlighted on the screen. We recommend the participants to watch them and make the most of the resources available. We'll now open the session for Q&A. I know it's already 4. If you have any questions, please post in the Q&A uh, section of the uh, content. Please feel free. Right? So we have a question that is related to understanding whether BIM, or let's say this entire set of processes that we saw for ISO 19650, whether we can use it for any small projects, or is it only limited to large projects? So to answer that question, it's like, if your project requires that level of critical verification, or critical documentation to make sure that you take care of each and every aspect of the project, then it is definitely required. It's just like, if you have a 2-day project, or let's say if your project ends in 2 days, you wouldn't want to be spending, let's say, 6 days in documenting all of these requirements just to finish that 2 day project. So based on the project requirement complexity, you can identify and pick and choose which of the which of these different processes and standards are relevant to project, and then implement them as you go, right? So we have another question. Can you elaborate on how you help global companies in adopting BIM? Right. So talking about global companies, what we have seen is there are there are organizations. Let's take the example of, let's say Australia or UK or the US or Middle East or any European country. Each organization, they have their own internal processes that are being developed over the due course of their organization's growth. And of course there are certain nationally accepted and followed practices that are serving as annexures to this particular standard. What we've been able to help our clients with is bring in a standardized framework. Let's say if the building is being built in India, and the architecture and interior design consultant is from, let's say, Europe, and the structural consultant is from Australia, and let's say MEP consultant is from, let's say, Malaysia or Singapore. So all of these consultants have different methodologies in delivering projects. So when we work with the owners and become that owner's representative for implementing BIM, we define these requirements at the initial stage, align all these different stakeholders to that level of requirement, and the framework of ISO 19650, which serves as the common platform where everybody can come in, follow that protocol and the standards that are developed, and then hit the ground running with minor changes to align to this new requirement. And by adopting BIM, I mean, this is at a implementation or at a standardization level. And then, of course, further jumping into use cases and realizing more potential out of the implementation of BIM, we've been able to support clients in implementing 4D and 5D simulations for effectively managing projects in virtual design and construction framework, where the planned model, or according to the planned Gantt chart, or let's say project schedule that you would have developed, we associate the work breakdown structure WBS ID to individual model elements and validate the accuracy and validate individual construction sequence of activities and identify the critical interdependency of the elements. And further, we've used reality capture to bring in on-site construction activities that can be used to compare planned versus actual and keep track of the construction progress on site to ensure that your project progress is being documented and quantified. So rather than you just saying that your project is 60% complete by just randomly looking at the, or let's say taking a site walk, you can actually quantify the amount of construction that has completed in context to what was planned, to keep a track of planned versus actual consistently throughout the progress of the project. I hope I answered that question. I'll take the next question of what is data drop, how many times should the data drop to be done in a typical project, where let's say a data drop is any milestone that is predefined, where the delivery teams or task teams submit the uh, minimum milestone requirements of that milestone on the project, and share that information or data over to the acceptance or evaluation of the lead appointed party or the appointing party. And to answer how many times should data drop be done in a typical project, there is no limit, or there's no minimum or maximum limits. It is totally dependent on the project timeline and the level of critical review that the appointing party has been planning on the project. Right. Right. I, I guess we'll end the session here. I hope the session was fruitful, and you got some insights in making your information management process better. Thank you for being part of the webinar. We look forward to hosting you in our future webinars where we bring key discussions on more and more topics that add value to you and your organization. Of course, we're ending the Q&A session now, but if you feel like you need any additional information on any of these topics, feel free to go through some of the already webinars that have been posted before this. But if you still need to discuss, of course, reach out to us on the email ID on our website. We can most definitely answer your questions and help you accelerate your digital transformation. Right.